I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share. Keep stopping. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
You have my permission. So I'm going to share my screen in a minute, and I'm going to share a spoken word piece by Sekou Andrews. He is a US-based spoken word artist who wrote this piece for an event that my US colleagues were hosting. And it speaks so deeply to the work of Facing History. So instead of hearing my voice, I'd like you to listen to the spoken word. And as you listen, I have turned on the closed captions. So hopefully you can capture some of the words because they go quickly. And I'm happy to send the link so later you can listen again. But I'd love to hear afterwards, you know, what are the pieces, what are the lines, what are the ideas that resonate for you? And so after I show this, we'll have some time for a bit of a conversation. Okay, let's see. So can you see this, the blue screen, thumbs up?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect, and let's see. And then I need another thumb up if you can hear, or just tell me you can't hear.
Can hear.
Let's see if you hear the piece.
At some point in our adult life, we have all experienced the challenge of having to sit a young person down and have the talk. You know what I mean. They ask, where do babies come from? And we stumble through the talk about reproduction. They ask, why did Paw die? And we have the talk about mortality. They ask, Daddy, why did you say mommy is so annoying? And we have the talk about non-disclosure agreements. Really? That's what we're doing? Traitor. And as they grow, questions, they get even more philosophically challenging for us. Because eventually, where do babies come from becomes, where do human beings come from? Where does hope come from? Where does hatred come from? I don't know, right? These are the queries that really stump us. But that is not all our fault. Because till now, we've been ill-equipped to face advanced versions of the talk. But now, when they ask, where does humanity come from? We have a curriculum to help these critical thinkers train in how they and others can become more humane. Now, when they ask, where does hatred or hope come from? We have an entire pyramid of pedagogy for building head, heart, and soul agents through intellectual rigor, ethical reflection, and emotional engagement. Call it human school, where the classrooms are conversations on history, where the faculty looks and teaches a bit differently, like a seminar on suffrage taught by Ida B. Wells, where we have to face opponents that look like ourselves. Or you might experience a powerful mindfulness lesson taught by Breonna Taylor, adjunct professor, who teaches us to meditate on a name or phrase as mantra and silently say it over and over, inviting it to haunt us. While Malcolm runs a masterclass on the mathematics of identity, using the value of X to solve for Y, humanity must evolve to thrive. Keep walking the halls of our curriculum and you'll find anti-bias training taught by the Little Rock Nine, while Tommy Smith and Kaepernick run drills at PE, how to fight with one fist and stand on one knee. And the Dalai Lama might be the awesome guest lecture for the history lesson, making them read from textbooks with pages that are reflective to keep perspective on the ways them and us are connected. While the class on home economics, that's run by teenage Malala, who teaches young girls a woman's place at an early age so they always know how to rage against the machines men have made. And Professors John Lewis and Nelson Mandela train us to fight better. Instructors Hannah Arendt and Anne Frank teach us to do better. Educators from concentration camps to internment camps, from Soweto in 76 to Charlottesville in 17, all demanding you all better be better. Because that is the ultimate purpose of education. Betterment. But we know that betterment, it is a double-edged blade, can be the cause of our demise or the way that we are saved. We, as educators, have the power to teach people to be better at the expense of all others, to teach people that they are better than all others, or to teach people how to be better through all others and better for all others. So it is up to us to teach each other how to teach each other, to learn from each other, how to learn from each other, because education shapes humanity, and that humanity shapes people, and those people make choices, and those choices make history, which is why whenever adults ask our students, what do you expect to change by dragging up the past? It is our students who are now empowered to give those adults the talk. Whenever our students ask adults about the rules of engagement with law enforcement, our lessons offer perspective that helps adults give those kids the talk. And whenever intolerance and injustice ask our ecosystem of parents and teachers, volunteers and donors, students and staff and lifelong learners, why are you teaching people to take away our traditions, tear down our statues, change our school names, and erase history? We tell them, do not fear. We are not erasing history, nor the stories it tells, but we are disgracing the misery of justice withheld. We are creating consistency in bias dispelled and engaging liberty so that it prevails. We are praising the victory of those who rebel, disgracing complicity in bully assails, celebrating epitomes of doing good well by raising publicity on upstanders' tales. We are replacing iniquities we need to expel, appraising antiquities to learn from our trails, waving blissfully and bidding farewell to hatred, bigotry, and injustice upheld. We are embracing bitterly yesterday's fails. We are chasing blissfully new ways to excel, and we are bracing insistently for mirrors beheld, for we are facing history and ourselves, and we are ready to have the talk and teach the walk and do the work to prove where better human beings come from.
Okay. So let's have the talk. Let's talk. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. You can raise your hand. You can just jump in. No rules. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and impressions and what you heard, what connected to you. Jeff, I can't tell if that's a clap or if that's a hand raise.
Me, no, I'm just
It's a
resting
clap.
my head.
Oh no,
Oh,
it's
Jeff.
Jeff Harrison. It's a clapping. It was a clapping. It's not a hand raise. Does anyone want to start off?
Who's got any questions out there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, Virginia.
That was pretty amazing. Thank you for the caption, because otherwise I would have been lost.
Me too.
Can you just, this may be unfair, but can you give like a little example of something that teacher, like a material a teacher might be given, or how to teach some little piece that
So let me do that. Let me do that in a moment, and I'll make sure to spend time to do that. But just to start, I would love to hear, what connected for you. Was there something, Virginia, like a line that really like you're still thinking about, or an idea?
Yeah, I think there were a few lines right after each other about teaching people about betterment at the cost of someone else, as opposed to betterment that brings everybody up together. And I think that's part of Rotary, really. That's what we try to do with sort of peace and conflict resolution and things like that. That's the piece that spoke to me.
Thank you. Maybe we can take another couple of people. Jeff, that's definitely a hand.
Yes. So for me, prior to learning about facing history and ourselves, I watched as I went through school, my children went to school, and we study history, we study geography, but there's no connection between regurgitating, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and he goes and kills 40 million Indigenous people. Yeah. We don't learn to connect history with something that will resonate within us in contemporary world values. We also have started a whole movement where we're canceling culture, doing these things. And what this spoke to was using history as a reflection to our own behavior in contemporary times, to learn from past injustices, not to criticize or condemn, but to take that information, and we become better human beings by using our past as a mirror both to the present and the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I love when he holds up that image and you can mirror, you can see him lifting it. One more, if somebody has another connection that they wanted to share. Tara.
Hi, Laura. I'd say I'd never be eloquent enough to remember half those words, but I think the message will stick with me for a long time. I have a young son, and I'm trying to raise him in a more complete way, I guess, in the education that I would have received. I have a good friend who was born and raised in Alberta, and she came to Ontario to go to university, and she had never actually heard anything about Louis Riel, except that he was like this traitor and he was like a really horrible person. And it just really brought it to light, I guess, for me. And, in my 20s, kind of hearing this statement from her, thinking about what we could be missing, not in, cancel culture or like tearing things down, but like in just telling the whole story. I think it's important that we don't just get like a one-sided story. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to transition to this question that Virginia asked around, so what does this actually look like? I mean, we're not really having classes with Malala and the Dalai Lama and Kaepernick, although that would be fun. But what do classrooms actually look like? And so I'm going to ask you, I promise, Virginia, I'm going to get there. I will not get off the phone, off the Zoom line without going there. But I want you to think, I'm going to keep this conversation going a bit longer. Can you think about the last year and all of the events that happened? Just scan your memory of like opening up the news in the morning or listening to CBC radio or wherever you access, and think about all the things that have happened in the past year. From George Floyd's murder to inequities that we have seen emerge out of COVID, right? Now, and let's now think about the last 3 months. So name some of the things that we've been reading about. What's been happening in our country, around the world, even in the last 3 months?
The finding of Indigenous remains.
Thank you. Absolutely. Karen, I think it's Karen, but you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that the biggest thing that has happened in the last few months is the discovery of graves of Aboriginal students. And not just a few, but hundreds and hundreds, and there are many more coming. So I think that is the most important event that has occurred in Canada. And I hope that that is going to open the eyes how much mistreatment was given to Aboriginal people. And so far, our history does not narrate too much about Aboriginal history, because our history has been written by people who were not Aboriginal. And all history reflects the viewpoint of people who write it.
Who writes it, exactly.
There's no such thing as neutral history. And that's the problem,
So now imagine you're a classroom teacher. In the last 3 months, the attack, the brutal, hate-motivated attack in London, Ontario, right? That happened, it happened in the last month of school. And so now I'd like you to imagine what it feels like to be a classroom teacher. And you wake up in the morning and now you have to you feel a responsibility to bring these moments into your classroom. and what that feels like. Both, and let's also, in the last 3 months, you're in a virtual classroom where you show up like this. This is what your classroom looks like. And you are trying to create community, and you're trying to bring an authentic, real, honest conversation into your classroom about the events that are happening all around you. Because you want your classroom, you want your students to be engaging. And so where I want to sort of now take in answering your question, Virginia, is that Facing History has been there this entire year to support teachers with content in addressing these issues. And so when teachers woke up after the news of the murders that took place in London, we had stayed up till 2 a.m. to ensure that there was an email in the teacher's inbox saying, here's how to talk about this in your classroom this morning. And when our teachers started learning about, and our students started learning about the unmarked graves, we had teaching strategies available for teachers because of the work that we've been doing in authentic relationship with Indigenous partners that have examined the residential schools. And we've been supporting teachers all along with how to create brave learning spaces where these kinds of conversations can happen. And so that's at the heart of Facing History. So to answer your question, Virginia, what does Facing History look like? Facing History looks like resources. We are resources and support and strategies and staff who are there to help teachers bring content into their classrooms, whether it's a history classroom or a language arts classroom, an English classroom, politics, the social sciences. We are there for teachers to have honest conversations with their students on deeply challenging and complicated moments in history or today in a way that ultimately empowers young people in the way that we heard Sekou Andrews talk about. Our students are the citizens, and as Jeff said, who become Rotarians. They're the people who stand up because they know the consequences of not standing up. So that's what we do. Leslie, see you wait.
I'm finding one of the challenges of our time, especially with younger people and even older people, is they don't know the difference between reliable information and propaganda and nonsense. And you can see that with some of the crazy conspiracy theories about COVID and the following Donald Trump has, and even the lack of information. We have a client in our business that's in his late 30s. And I guess he doesn't read the newspaper because we were having a conversation and we mentioned about residential schools and he never heard of it. Didn't know, with all this news, this was just last week. So I think students need to be taught, in addition to what you're doing is very important, but also be taught how to find reliable information, the difference between reliable and unreliable, and to be taught that social media is a bad source, and social media is a very personal experience because it's a business model to keep you engaged, to keep you on the channel, and the more things you see that fit your belief, your initial belief, if you click on those articles, you'll keep seeing more of the same.
Right. So let me respond. Can I do a time check? I think I'm now maybe over time, but am I okay for another 5 minutes? Good. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. So then let me fully answer your question, Leslie. So understanding news sources has to be central to what we do with our students, and one of the things that we are supporting. So I can send some follow-up links. Just tell me who I should send it to, but we have a whole page on our website that is for current events. And it's not only about like, this happened and here's how to teach about it, but it is also about how to access media and how to navigate news sources. So that is a critical tool when we think about citizenship. If that's our end goal, as citizens, we have to understand how to responsibly engage in acquiring news. Now, the challenge is we all currently live in these echo chambers. So we curate our news. So not only do we have to help students understand how to navigate real, authentic news sources, but we also have to help young people have civil discourse, because we do not surround ourselves anymore by people who have differing opinions. So how do we actually talk when we curate myself? I mean, I will tell you, there are newspapers that I don't typically read, but it puts me at I'm not able to then talk in a real way with people who read that newspaper, because I curate my news. I live in an echo chamber. People have similar values to myself. So when it comes to actually talking to someone who has a different opinion than me, I have to have those skills. And so it's both those pieces, and it is what Facing History does, and it is in service of creating empowered citizens, because these are the tools we need to live today, right? Differently than when I was growing up, right? We didn't curate our news in the same way. We didn't have this sort of singular view. So, Jeff.
I just want to also add, Leslie, teachers receive multiple emails from Facing History and ourselves. And about 8 months ago, there were a slew of emails saying how to teach your students how to discern what they read. And there's actually curriculum for teachers to address your exact point.
Yeah.
Not only how to filter and understand different perspectives, but also how to engage in dialogue that's not defending a position, but expressing opinions in a way that builds consensus towards an agreed upon understanding. So in these kinds of environments, a Rotary Club and Leora coming for half an hour, it's very difficult to really drill down deeply into the curriculum, its impact, the resources needed to supply these teachers with the information, the researchers that Facing History does to write the curriculum. In case anyone's forgotten, Facing History has helped create the curriculum in schools in Ontario and other provinces on how to teach the residential school history. It's called Stolen Lives. I don't mean to usurp your time. I just wanted to make sure Leslie understood that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually, I mean, the next thing, I'll end with questions in a moment, but I actually want to pick up where Jeff was and say that, it's with gratitude to Toronto East Rotary, because, I was looking back when I was doing that, like how many times I speak. So I think I met all of you or some of you back in 2013. And so I wanted to give you just a bit of a where we were and where we are lens. And it is with gratitude, because you have invested in Facing History through those years. And in particular with gratitude for this past year, where the investment that you made was so necessary to help support the teachers in this unprecedented year. So here's just some data that I pulled. So when I met you back in, who was there? Definitely, I remember. I think actually, wait, did Karen? You, I think, were my contact person back then. Yes. So when we met back in 2013, we had just under hovering around 1,000 teachers in our network. Those teachers were all in Ontario and some in Manitoba. Our network has now grown to over 14,000 educators, and there are teachers represented in every province and territory across the country. Just this past year, we had over 500,000 visitors from Canada to our website. Okay, so just the scope has just grown it's just incredible, the growth. In 2015, we launched Stolen Lives, which is the resource on the residential schools that Jeff was speaking about. We have that book published, and we have distributed almost 6,000 books since then. And our landing page for Stolen Lives has been visited about 830,000 times for Stolen Lives. Those are the number of page views, and the English language PDF has been downloaded over 2,000 times. In 2019, we translated that book into French, And that page has been visited over 12,000 times. And so again, you know, our reach has grown, our impact is growing, and it has never been more important for teachers and students to have the kind of education that Facing History provides. This is such a critical moment where we require active, engaged citizens. And I have to say that, you know, the vernacular of saying like, these are the leaders of the future, I no longer say that. I have a 15-year-old son. These are the leaders of today. If we look at, you know, Virginia, we're talking about the work that you, and I think Bob, although I don't see him on my screen at the moment. Oh no, Jim, it was Jim, had done in pulling weeds, right? If we think about who are leading us in environmental awareness and change right now, it's the youth. Who are leading movements, who understand, to your point, Leslie, who understand how to use social media in the positive to create change movements? It's the youth. And so I no longer think that we are in the business of creating future citizens and future leaders. We are very much in the business of creating today's leaders. So while they may be future Rotarians, they are leading us now. And so it feels tremendously important, the work that we're doing, the responsibility to be there for our teachers and their students. There's a gravity that I have never felt before. And I thank all of you for standing behind us. So thank you for the time today. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
What is the Ontario government or the federal government doing as far as the curriculum for history in our classes today?
Yeah.
Are they doing enough or not enough?
So that's a very important question. Education in this province, in this country, is held provincially. So the federal government can make investments, and we've received funding from the federal government, but then it's up to the provinces to dictate how that is used, what curriculum looks like. And across the country, history is taught very differently, and whether history is even a mandated curricular area. So not every province even has a mandated Canadian history course. We are very lucky in this province that their grade 10 history is a mandated course. It is fairly well resourced, but you know, we could always have better resources. What is, or more, a more resourced approach. I would say that I think social sciences tend to not get as much attention financially. So you saw the big rollout of the math curriculum and STEM programs, and that is very, very important. But I would say that the humanities need attention, and we work very closely with school boards across the province. And so, you know, I guess it's a loaded question. I, as somebody who works in education, you could always provide more supports. I think that, you know, there are certainly some significant problems in this province. I do think that we are in a reckoning moment where, if not the provincial government and the Ministry of Education, but schools are truly pushing up their sleeves, and school boards, to create change in really critical, necessary ways. And Facing History is a partner there in working to do that work.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Virginia?
Virginia.
Leora mentioned that there were one or two links. Leora, if you send it to me, if anybody's interested, I can send it out, or I could just send it out to everyone. And if you don't want it, you can just ignore it.
I would love a copy of what you showed today. I've never seen that. It blew me away. I want one.
Okay, so I will send several links. I don't know, Jeff, can you connect us? I don't think I actually have a direct email. And then I will send sort of a series, and I'll also include my email. So if you want to be in touch, if I get off the Zoom call and all of a sudden you have a question, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation with anyone. Excellent.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to ask Hema to thank our speaker today.
Leora, thank you so much for an amazingly great presentation. The last couple of months have been very trying on a lot of people, and I am so glad that your organization is going to be sending something to the teachers. And I'm sure that it's not just us, the adults, that are feeling it, but I'm sure that there's a lot of youth that have heard the news and are feeling it too, which compounds along with what's happening with COVID. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all for the time and the participation. That was really lovely. I'm happy I didn't have to talk for the entire time.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I guess if anybody else has anything to add in good of Rotary? That's a no, so I guess we'll be calling it quits. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.